just thinking as the days and weeks pass, how much of a season can we actually get now that we've had like 8 races, I think it is, that have been cancelled or postponed, so to speak. And I saw some comments from Ferrari boss Mattia Binotto earlier on this week, and he said that, look, we're assessing various ideas, having races closer together, maybe doing 2 or 3 races in January and cancelling Friday practice. Now, I'm no expert like you guys, of course, but these sound like pretty big decisions. You know, it's almost like cancelling practice for football as well and just going into game day, kind of not cold turkey, but something like that. What do you think of those ideas? Are they, you know, realistic, and having the World Championship go straight into January, is that kind of like the path you think we're headed on?
Well, first of all, cancelling Friday practice is a great idea anyway. But if they're going to achieve the season that it seems that F1 wants, they're going to have to do that. Binotto said, obviously, going into January, you're going to there's such a backlog of these races. They're going to have to use as much time as they get, I guess. But the key to all of it is when they can start the season. So Chase Carey said 15 and 18 races, but it was based on a best case scenario that they can start in the summer. And it's impossible to predict what this is going to look like, but it's hard to imagine many European races happening in the next couple of months. So at the moment, you know, and the Canadian Grand Prix, for example, has to decide by Easter, I think, the Easter weekend, about what they do with their race. So a lot of guesswork at the moment, it sounds like. But as soon as we get back to racing, I think it'll be pretty much non-stop racing, because there's going to be a certain amount of weekends, and they're going to have as many races as they can fit into that spurt. It's going to be pretty manic. I'm not sure how they'll quite do it, but yeah, if they can salvage the season, I guess they will.
And when he says probably having races closer together, of course we know that probably means with dates, but geographically speaking, I suppose that has to come into consideration a little bit too. Would they take some of the races, like we said, now probably some of the bigger ones where, you know, a lot of money has been invested in there, and probably try to reschedule them in place of other ones that are a bit more far out, you know, instead, like say probably keep more just on the European circuits? Or what are they thinking by keeping them, you know, this close together?
Yeah, it is a tricky one. So there's several criteria which they're probably going to use to create a calendar once they have something of a start date, which is the real tricky thing. One of the big things is the climate in each of those areas. So if you are going to run a season into January, you're not going to be holding races at Spa and Silverstone in January, because there's a high chance it's going to be freezing temperatures, it could be snowing. So what you're probably looking at is that you've got races in the Middle East and other parts of the country, parts of the world where the weather's much better at that time of year. Southern Hemisphere races, maybe we don't have many, but you know, maybe Brazil or something like that. And so you would probably look to run those later in the year, and then make the most of what's left of the summer from the starting point, if there is any summer left, to get through some of the European races. But the other thing that comes into this when you're deciding which races go ahead and which don't is money, of course, because Formula One needs the money from the races to survive. The team need the money from the races because they get paid centrally from Formula One based on the revenues that Formula One brings in each year. So I would expect the races that spend a bit more money to be prioritised, and so you'll start to have a calendar come about like that. But it's been quite clear from Formula One. They've said 15 to 18 races. I think they've said that because they need to prove to their shareholders that they still have a viable business this year, that they're still going to be bringing in money, and there is no money in Formula One if you don't have a race, really. So, that, you know, I think they're trying to make it sound, you know, give the world a best case scenario of we're going to have races happening this year, and this is roughly how many we're going to have. But I don't think anyone yet is willing to talk about a start date. All they are talking about is ways later in the year that you can work races in, because you know, if it does run through to January, maybe February, you've also got the 2021 season starting up. The advantage there is that F1's bought itself a bit of time by saying that all teams have to stick with the same chassis from 2020 to 2021. So things like pre-season testing, all that winter development that we're used to, that we had actually quite recently, probably won't be so necessary going into 2021, or maybe scrapped completely, because they'll be racing so late in the official 2020 season that will run into early 2021, that they then basically just start again with the new year as you would expect, and carry on. But it's so hard to tell. Like, there's no actual answer at the moment as to when the season will start, as to how many races it will have, as to where those races will be, which ones will be prioritised. So it's all up in the air. But I think the stuff that Binotto was talking about came from a team principals meeting, I think happened on Thursday last week. So the team principals are meeting regularly, but they've also given the power to Formula One to create the calendar itself, without the need to kind of negotiate with the teams on various things. So really what it will come down to is F1 negotiating with the promoters and basically coming to terms which work for everyone. But it's a really tricky situation because all the promoters have created those races around their original dates, and they've kind of, sold tickets and so on. And a lot of the circuits have said that your ticket is still valid even for the new date, but imagine that you've planned your year and it's all changing around anyway. So it's a tricky one, and I don't really know where it ends up. I don't think anyone really knows where it ends up at the moment, but we'll have to wait until we get some better visibility on how this virus is going to develop and when life can go back to normal.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube, and for more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app, and for premium content plus live streaming, make sure to subscribe to ESPN Player.